You build a really successful e-commerce company, sort of like brick by brick, one step at a time. It's like the tortoise and the hare. You can take small, slow steps and you will get there because it's very predictable. Just don't burn out along the way.
You're listening to The Growth Booth, the show focused on achieving lifestyle freedom through online businesses. Whether you're looking for step-by-step strategies to start building an online business, simple game plans to grow your business, or proven lifestyle freedom frameworks, you are in the right place. Stay tuned and be sure to join the thousands of listeners already in growth mode.
Adam Booth here. Welcome to The Growth Booth. I'm joined here today with the CEO of our e-commerce brands company, Kelly Campbell, and we're going to be talking about how to survive and thrive during all the chaos and turmoil of a global pandemic. It's fair to say it's been an interesting couple of years, Kelly.
Yeah, 100%, but no, it's all good.
Look, just before we really dive into some of the things that we're going to share here, a quick introduction to Kelly. Now, I first met Kelly, I want to say, going back almost a decade ago. Kelly was a founding member of our Blueprint Academy, which is a online training group that Steve and I work with, where we help people build their online businesses. And from the get-go, Kelly and her partner started building what was a very successful business from scratch with no prior knowledge. And we fast forward a few years, and Steve and I were on a parallel track with a couple of brands of our own. And it got to the point where we just said, look, you're crushing it, we're crushing it. Together, we could crush it even more. So we combined our resources and our skills and our networks, and we combined our companies together. Today, Kelly is the CEO of that company and really the mastermind in a lot of the growth and success that we've had over the past few years. So over the past couple of years, just while this pandemic has been raging and causing havoc throughout the world, Kelly has steered the ship for us in getting enormous geographic growth, so expanding into different markets. Also massive social media growth, so reaching people through new ways that we really didn't do before. We've had massive platform growth as well, so moving away from being sort of a set of brands that were only sold on Amazon to being sold on lots of different marketplaces. And perhaps, the biggest win you could say that we've had is going from being just an online group of brands to an online and offline group of brands that now sells in well over 10,000 stores, which to me, growing up in New Zealand, I think we've got like 10,000 shops in the entire country of New Zealand. So having my brands, sold in over 10,000 stores around the world is truly amazing. So, Kelly, it's been amazing just to watch how you at the helm have navigated this. That's really what I'd like to talk about today. So, surviving and thriving during this pandemic. What have been the main challenges that you've faced in this pandemic for the e-commerce business?
Well, I think we as humans are very adaptable when we're put under a lot of pressure. And I think if it hadn't have been for the pandemic, we may not have pushed ourselves to do other things. And we knew that we had to diversify our income. It's not always easy finding those other streams of incomes. Like you can go on Google and you can Google stuff and that. But we really had to sit down and think, what do we want to do? Where do we want to be? How are we going to survive? And at the time, the pandemic was only supposed to last months. And it's now 2 years down the track.
The funny thing, just to cut you off there for a second, I remember right at the beginning, it was almost like in our television and sort of everyday media, no one was talking about the pandemic, but I remember the factories shutting in China, and I was like, what's this all about? Right. Not really hearing about this much in mainstream media, yet our factories were closed. And I think that was because, things obviously kicked off in China prior to hitting, the Western world. But that definitely threw a spanner in the works for the supply chain for a few months. I mean, that was probably the first big challenge that I can sort of remember. The supply chain started to get a little bit disrupted. Yeah.
Supply chain throughout the whole 2 years has been a bit of a problem, but we've just put things in place to overcome that. And I think You've just got to be a bit forward thinking and think, well, if I'm going to need product by, Christmas, for example, instead of ordering in July or August, I'm going to have to order in May or June, because logistically, we know that the transport time is going to be that much longer. So it makes you a better planner, because if not, and lots of businesses have fallen down, unfortunately, not just ecom businesses, but lots of other businesses. And I think, if you sit down, like I can remember we were all brainstorming, what are we going to do? How are we going to overcome this situation? And I wouldn't say we're completely over it now, but I can definitely see light at the end of the tunnel, finally.
Finally, yeah. I feel like the world has adapted. I mean, we talk about how this whole pandemic has accelerated online sales by, I think it's like 5 or 6 or 7 years, or even a decade or something. I can't remember the exact number now, but we've seen that. And it's almost been like, when I say we, I'm referring to the e-commerce sellers as an industry have had to adapt and quickly catch up, because there's been so much more demand. People have been buying so many things online that they would have previously bought offline. And obviously with that kind of a change, there's been teething issues, and some of them have taken best part of a couple of years to sort of iron out. But I tend to agree with you. I feel like a lot of the hard times are behind us, and I think I'm more bullish and excited about e-commerce than ever before. I'm just talking about how COVID affected the landscape, though. You mentioned, some people gone out of business. Would you say there's more competition, less competition, similar competition now compared to 2 years ago?
Well, I think there's pros and cons, because we've re-educated the customer to buy online. So we've got that, been great for us. And I think a lot of people have been spending a lot of time at home because of lockdown. So they're looking for ways to, maybe create another income stream. There has been more competition, I think. But I find now, especially with Amazon, it's more of a level playing field. So you've got serious people coming on Amazon now. So you haven't got the people that, like want to dabble or, don't take it very seriously. So, and I think Amazon have shut down a lot of the black hat type people that were on there previously. So it's far more professional than what it ever was. It's attracting more people that are serious about going into business and creating another income stream, or creating their main income stream. So I think it's different. The whole platform is different to what it was. But for me personally, I find it better.
I think it's maturity. And I remember years ago, I'm sure you remember this as well, there would be big brands that just would not even want to have anything to do with Amazon. They sort of felt like, oh my God, we don't want to have anyone selling their brands on Amazon. And I feel like people that were like that and brands that were like that have just realized that, hey, look, e-commerce is kind of here to stay, and we can either go with it or just sort of lose our place. And one of the other things that has happened a lot over the past couple of years, and we'll talk about this shortly, is it's not just Amazon. Amazon's not the only game in town. So that maturity is also spreading throughout the industry, which I think is great, because it opens up more opportunities to people that take it seriously. I think it's always been the case that, someone who has taken it seriously has always done better than someone who's just been a hobbyist, or someone who's trying to, use the dark arts and, black hat, do all the naughty things that they really shouldn't be doing. But Amazon has got a lot better at sort of, I think, controlling that nowadays, which is good. Now, how's it been dealing with manufacturers? So I know a lot of the people you're dealing with on a daily basis are in China. Has anything changed there in the way, if you think back to, I don't know, 3 years ago, pre-pandemic compared to now?
One thing China are very good at, and that's adapting to change. Yeah. And they've done that very well. I know a lot of people have got problems with China and stuff, but personally, our experience with our manufacturers have been amazing. So they've overcome the challenges that we saw at the beginning when they shut down their facilities. And they didn't even completely shut down. They maybe shut down production lines and stuff so they could socially distance and stuff like that. And we were always in contact with China on a daily basis about the situation and how it was going to affect. It actually didn't affect us at all, but it would have done some companies. But we were extremely lucky. Our manufacturers are not in the part of China that was hit heavily. So I think the restrictions imposed on our manufacturers weren't as bad. So
yeah, I guess it also helps that we don't rely on just one manufacturer. So, we don't have all our eggs in that one basket, so to speak. And I mean, that's an example of diversifying the manufacturer to diversify some of the risks from that regard. At the very start of this episode, you mentioned that one of the things that we've done well to grow has been to diversify the sales channels. Perhaps we could talk about this strategy a little bit more and, some of the ways that we have been diversifying from a marketing standpoint. So not just the sales channels, but also, social media is another good example.
We always knew whilst we were on Amazon that we wanted to get into retail. This the pandemic pushed us a little bit more. So I think there's two parts of retail. So you've got your big box stores, you've got your Walmarts, your Targets, CVS stores, that kind of thing, your supermarket chains. But then you've also got your smaller, what we would call mum and pop style stores. So we initially reached out to, the big stores, and we're in a few big stores, as you know, already. But we also wanted to reach more boutique style stores. So that's when we went looking for, how are we going to do that? We cannot go to trade shows because we're in the middle of a pandemic. So how do we reach these little stores? And we found a few platforms that deal in wholesale only, and it's very much like the Amazon for wholesale, basically, and it works extremely well. And we've managed to, we've reached over, I think now we're probably at about 12 or 13,000 stores, maybe, all up with our big box stores and our little stores. So, yeah.
It's amazing how these, little stores that you sort of refer to really do add up when you start focusing on them. So just to sort of put this in perspective for people and give a little bit more context, can you explain how we sell to these little stores? I mean, we're not going up on the door and sort of knocking on the door or anything. So how do they find out about us in the first place? And then do they just buy one product, or how does that work?
Yeah, so it's a platform kind of like Amazon. So you list your products, you create a listing, you put your case sizes in and your minimum order quantity. So just like you would with any big box retail store, it all depends on what platform you're on, but normally that you have a commission to pay, and that can be anywhere from 5 to 25% depending on the platform. So you would need to factor that in. And then you list your product, you get an order placed, your order comes through depending on what we're not using any software at the moment to automatically process those orders. So we process them manually, and then you just process the order. And so normally we have customers that buy $50 worth of product of one of our brands, which is a lower price brand. But we also have customers that buy $1,000 worth of product. So you can reach, for example, we could reach somebody that's just doing maybe home parties and stuff like that just want a little bit of product. And this has been such a great marketing exercise for us. We're also in, I think, about 15 subscription boxes. So we can have somebody come along and say, well, I need 1,000 of those units. I think our biggest order was 3,000 units for a subscription box. That's brilliant marketing exercise for us because we're reaching 3,000 people, So, and we've been able to attract a lot of customers to our own website because of that. So
yeah.
Very diverse, the customers on there.
So it's kind of like, to put this another way, it's kind of like there are different platforms out there like Amazon where people can list their products. Someone who owns a shop, maybe they own a little shop, they can go to that platform and they can say, okay, well, I want to buy 10 of these so I can put them in my shop. And 10 might represent one case. So they're buying like one case of product. It might cost $50, or maybe they've got a big shop, or they've got a few different shops in the city. And so they might buy multiple cases, and that's sort of what they're doing. And then the products could really be anything. They could be, marker pens for coloring in with or something, or, whiteboard pen, stationery. It could be literally anything. I feel like this is a strategy that is massively underutilized, reaching out to these mum and pop stores that are, there are thousands and thousands of them. And especially when you put it in perspective and say, we got an order for, I think you said 3,000 units. If you compare that to 3,000 different people coming onto Amazon and buying one product at a time, this is the power of when you're selling, to retail versus selling to the end consumer. Some of these big stores that Kelly was talking about, I mean, if you think in the United States, big stores, the likes of, Walmart, CVS, Rite Aid, Walgreens, any of these major stores, when they buy product from you, they don't buy one or two products like a consumer. They might buy like 100,000 products or 10,000 products. I mean, that brings its own challenges because you have to be able to provide those products, but it's a pretty darn good problem to have because you're getting an influx. Like that's the real avalanche of orders that you can get when you're selling to a retailer versus selling to a consumer. If someone has already got a brand that they're selling and they're thinking about trying to sell it to a retailer, like they want to get it in Target or CVS or whatever, how do they start that? How do they even start that process?
So ideally, what we done, and I wouldn't necessarily recommend this, but it was an easier path for us. We actually contacted some brokers so that do this on a daily basis. It's their main job. The ones that we contacted personally, they've been in business nearly 30 years now. They had contacts with places like Target, Walmart, all the big stores. And there are also special shows that you can go to where you can reach buyers directly. You can do it that way as well. But it's just, for me, it was understanding the terminology because it was, when they start talking about, case sizes and turnover and stuff like that, it was something that I'm not used to. You pick it up pretty quickly, mine. So I would say you could do it either way. You could do it by yourself or you could do it using a broker. Depends on, what path you want to take. I'd say using a broker would be quicker.
Yeah. And when you're talking about how quick this kind of a thing can unfold, for someone who's already got a product with their own brand that they're selling online, how long would it take just to make this a bit more real for people? Is it something they can do in 1 month, or is it going to take them 10 months? Or what's the sort of a realistic, optimistic timeline that they could expect there?
So we attended a show in June when we started, and we had our first order in August, and that was for like a chain of stores. The projects are longer. It depends on who you're dealing with. If you're talking about a small chain of stores, then you can get.
What's a small chain? Like, what's a small chain of stores? How many stores do they have?
If you say 100 stores. Like that's not, I know that's not that small. Relatively speaking, when you're comparing to Walmart and the big stores, it is small. But the small chains, you could get an order really quickly, like the next month or so. But the big stores, I think, it's a bit of a longer project. So
what about the differences in just dealing with one of these small stores that might have 100 stores versus a Walmart that's got thousands? I mean, how about the red tape, the bureaucracy, just the general dealing with them? Are there any obvious differences?
Yes, there are obvious differences. The bigger chains tend to require more of your time for a start. So you might have more paperwork to complete. There might be more, I don't want to say regulatory, it's not regulatory, but their packaging requirements might be slightly different. We were quite lucky in that our packaging was set up because we knew we wanted to go into retail. We already had that in hand. So that's actually something to be aware of. If you're looking forward and thinking you may want to be in retail, make sure your packaging is right. Get that right before you approach the retail stores. And it just makes things so much quicker. But yeah, it's just generally more paperwork. And the big stores tend to have more people that you need to deal with. So you'll be dealing with accounts payable, warehouse, your buyer, your senior buyer, the VP of marketing and stuff like that. So because they want your brand to be a success, so they tend to.
There's a lot of people in the middle there that have to justify their day job as well. So they better be sending off a dozen emails to get all the bits and pieces in order.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I guess the other way of looking at it though is, these bigger stores like Walmart and Target and so on, they do have a few more hoops to jump through, but the upside is enormous. I mean, one Target with, multiple thousands of stores, you might have to have 10 or 15 or 20 small, franchises or stores for one Target. So what's going to be easier? I mean, I'd rather be everywhere and in all stores. But I think we've said that you could be being sold offline in hundreds of stores in a few months. That was our example. But I would still say to people, look, if you're thinking about doing something like this, look at it through a long-term lens. Don't look at it through a 6-month lens. Think about your brand instead as a project that you're going to be pursuing for 5 years. And then a lot of these big obstacles don't seem that big anymore, because it's not, oh my God, you got to do all these things in 1 month. It's no, you chip away at it, slow and steady wins the race, and you wake up one day and all of a sudden you're in 13,000 stores. It's not like, there was this bolt of lightning and it just happened. It was slow and steady progress, day by day, week by week, month by month. So it's that old thing of how do you eat an elephant, one bite at a time. And I think that's the best way to look at it. I am conscious of your time here, but briefly, social media for me has also been one of the big growth areas for us over the past 2 years. And I know that you and your team have done quite a bit of work here. How have you seen social media change in the past, before, COVID hit the world and to where we are today?
Yeah. So I think because people weren't going into stores, they were spending more time at home. So social media was, I think their audience figures were like double or something crazy like that. So, and we just wanted to keep customers engaged. We never take a political stance or anything like that on our social media. We always try and keep it uplifting, and, we always like to spread the kindness thing and stuff like that. And we done multiple giveaways during the pandemic because it was about people engaging with not only our customers, but maybe future customers, or anybody really. But wholesale customers are on social media, and we just wanted to keep them engaged and give back a bit. So we put a lot of effort into social media, and we also we worked with magazines, print magazines, digital magazines as well, with giveaways and stuff like that. And it was for relatively low cost. It was a great exercise. It paid off tenfold for us in terms of growing our audience and our email list, our other social channels. Yeah, it was good.
I think also it's a great example of when these things happen. There's really two ways to sort of approach it. You can approach it you can sort of curl up into a ball and wait for things to get better, or you can go out there and actively take the initiative and say, how can we turn this into an opportunity? What can we do here? And I think that's been the real magic, that you've been able to pull off over the past couple of years. And I think there's a big lesson to that for anyone who is considering starting an e-commerce business, because you're always going to have these ups and downs, and it could be a trivial thing, like a bad review, or it could be something major and industry changing, like a pandemic. But you have to have the right people in place and the right culture and the right attitude to adapt when these things happen. You mentioned it right at the start, being able to adapt, being agile, being able to change. And I think the companies that have changed have been the ones that have really thrived. We've spoken a little bit about e-commerce in general, but just coming back to wrap up, Amazon in 2022, how do you see Amazon as a place for people who are starting to build and maybe building their first online business? What are your thoughts on Amazon?
You can definitely still do it. Anybody can still do it, but it's a different place to where it was, 10 years ago. If you're going to take it seriously and think about what you're doing, a lot of people, they tend to buy a product from China, a generic product, and throw it up on Amazon and then wonder why they're not a millionaire in 6 weeks' time or something. You just need to think about it.
And that's kind of what it used to be like, 6 or 7 years ago. It was like a generic product and, I'm going to make this thing pink instead of all the others are black, and you're making money, but it's just not like that nowadays.
It's not like that anymore. And Amazon is actually turning into a creators market. So for all those creators out there, and this goes for wholesale as well, the wholesale love the creators, or the makers as they call them. So, if you've got an idea about a product, or, you like making candles or T-shirts or whatever it is, at the moment it's a buyer's market for something like that. So,
yeah. Well, this has been really insightful, Kelly, and it's just so amazing seeing what you've done. And hopefully people listening to the show are excited and inspired by, I think, what's available out there today. We've spoken about diversification, so selling to retailers, not just selling online. We've spoken a little bit, touched on geographic diversification as well, so you can sell in all over the world. I mean, we are sold, and our brands are sold in dozens of countries around the world now. In fact, I was looking the other day, and we've got customers from I think it's like over 100 different countries now. It's amazing how far things can sort of reach. So
we're on every continent now. I'm always quite proud of that fact.
We're not down in Antarctica, are we? Well, we might be used down there, but don't know if they've got any shops. I think it's like, this is e-commerce, it's here to stay, and it's always the first place whenever any of my closest friends or family ask me, Aidan, I see so many opportunities online, what is the one place to go? It's like e-commerce. You've got to be a part of e-commerce, because this is a wave that is exploding, and we're still I sort of feel like we're still even at the start of it. Obviously it's, it was different 10 years ago, but there's still so many untapped areas, like, selling to these mum and pop shops that you were talking about there, selling to retailers, social media. I mean, it's changing every single day. I found out the other day, and I had a laugh, because now our products are being sold on TikTok. And for the first time ever, I had to get a freaking TikTok account. And sure enough, it works though. It's another marketplace, and social selling is growing enormously. So it's kind of like, not if this is going to stick around, it's, what's the next best thing, and how can I build my brand? To really be able to nail this. I think also looking back in time, something I'd say to people, and I touched on this before, is, you build a really successful e-commerce company sort of like brick by brick, one step at a time. It's like the tortoise and the hare. You can take small, slow steps and you will get there, because it's very predictable. Just don't burn out along the way. I'm personally really excited about it. And it certainly helps when you've got people like you at the helm, Kelly. Thank you so much for everything you've shared here today. I will be putting a summary of some of the key points and key ideas in the show notes at thegrowthbooth.com. So to everyone listening out there, make sure you check out the show notes at thegrowthbooth.com, and make sure you tune in for the next episode. This is Aidan Booth, and we'll see you on the next episode.